President Zelensky asked the United Nations to force Russia into respecting the UN Charter.
The Israeli attacks are an existential threat to us, says the Lebanese ambassador to Brussels, and asks the EU to review its relations with Israel.
Schools in Italy launched an AI pilot project in an effort to enhance teaching. President Zelensky asked the United Nations to force Russia into respecting the UN Charter. He reminds nations that the war can't be paused or forgotten in his speech given to the UN Security Council. Zelensky adds that the war cannot end by just peace talks and that action is needed.
Putin has broken so many international norms and rules that he won't stop on his own. Russia can only be forced into peace. And that is exactly what's needed, forcing Russia into peace as the sole aggressor in this war, the sole violator of the UN Charter.
The Ukrainian president is expected to present his complete victory plan to Biden at the White House this week. He also plans to discuss it with presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Zelensky previously only alluded to the plan and said it would be the foundation for any future peace negotiations with Russia.
At least 3 people have died and 30 others have been injured in a Russian strike which has partially destroyed a residential building in Kharkiv. According to the mayor of Kharkiv, the building was undergoing repairs after a previous strike and was nearly ready for winter. Footage shows the extent of the damage on the large apartment block with a collapsed central section. Officials said on Telegram that the strike was a glide bomb attack and people remain trapped under the rubble as rescue operations are ongoing. Ukrainian officials said the strike came as Ukrainian troops engaged in hand-to-hand combat as they drove Russian forces out of a huge processing plant in the town of Vovchansk in Ukraine's northeast that had been occupied for 4 months.
The Israeli military intercepted a missile launch from Lebanon into the central region of their country in the latest escalation of hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. No injuries or damage were reported from the missile, which triggered sirens in cities like Tel Aviv and Netanya. This represents the furthest south missiles have penetrated Israel from Lebanon. The IDF said it had identified, struck and destroyed the building in southern Lebanon that launched the missile. Overnight, they also targeted a number of Hezbollah sites, including weapon storage facilities that set off secondary explosions. Israel killed a top Hezbollah commander on Tuesday as part of a 2-day bombing campaign that left more than 560 people dead and prompted thousands in southern Lebanon to seek refuge from the widening conflict.
Israel's attacks are an existential threat to Lebanon, says Lebanese ambassador to Brussels, Fadi Hajali, in an interview with Euronews. Over 500 people died in 2 days of bombing, while the international community fears an escalation of the conflict across the entire Middle Eastern region. For the ambassador, it is clear that Israel is targeting the human population and the civilians.
Absolutely. What's happening is an existential threat to Lebanon. The huge number of casualties are just atrocious. I mean, it's something unheard of in Lebanon in 1 day, and we hope that the international community would gather around and try to enforce a cessation of hostilities, immediate cessation of hostilities.
The Israeli armed forces claim to have struck dozens of Hezbollah targets, the Islamist paramilitary organization that controls much of Lebanon and often attacks northern Israel. But for Fadi Hajali, the war is against an entire people.
Actually, I mean, the narrative is wrong because it's a war waged against a country, a people, civilians. That's number one. And for us now, the main important issue is that this war should stop, and should stop now. If we are going to have this Israeli blatant offensive and aggression against our country, we are all united to denounce that.
The ambassador thanks the European Union for the economic support and the condemnatory statements of its High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Joseph Borrell. But he asks for a step further.
Of course, I mean, it's clear that Israel should be sanctioned. You should really look seriously into the transgressions that have been done by Israel. International Court of Justice has said so in 2 statements at least. So there are various possibilities to base yourselves, I mean, the EU institutions and the member states to sanction Israel. If not, at least we should review the whole aspect of the relation.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Swedish authorities accuse Iran of spreading text messages that led to violent protests after the burning of the Quran in 2023 by a handful of anti-Islam activists. Officials in Stockholm claimed that Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard carried out a data breach of a major Swedish SMS provider and have accused Iran of being responsible for around 15,000 text messages. Iranian authorities have not commented on Sweden's accusations. In August 2023, Swedish media reported that a large number of people in Sweden had received text messages in Swedish calling for revenge against people who were burning the Quran. The burning protests were allowed under the Freedom of Speech Act, which is protected under the Swedish constitution, and were approved by police.
Kosovo's Prime Minister Albin Kurti demands Serbia to hand over 45 indicted Serbian militants. They were charged for their alleged involvement in last year's attack that killed a Kosovan policeman. The Prime Minister also unveiled the street sign of Arodin Banjska in northern Kosovo, which has been named after the police officer.
Siledžija koji žele rat na Kosovu I Balkanu neće biti mesta na Kosovu. U Srbiji ne znam, ali oni na Kosovu neće šetati.
Kurti says Serbia must be held responsible and accuses them of trying to annex part of Kosovo. He claims the paramilitary group was orchestrated and financed from Serbia, but Serbia says the gunmen acted on their own. Only 3 people have been arrested, while others are at large. The European Union and the United States condemned the attack and have called on Serbia to hand over the gunmen. Human-induced climate change doubled the likelihood and intensified rainfall that led to the deadly floods in Central Europe. That is according to a new rapid study.
Human-induced climate change, so caused by the burning of oil, coal and gas, has increased the likelihood and intensity of the rainfall that caused these floods. And we found that climate change approximately doubled the likelihood of such an event to occur, and that the intensity increased by something between 7 and 20%.
Floods as a result of heavy rainfall killed 24 people and left a trail of destruction from Romania to Poland earlier this month. The 4-day rainfall was the heaviest ever recorded in Central Europe.
They say the best way to learn is from one's mistakes. The headmaster of this high school in Rome told us that the belief convinced him to introduce the use of AI to enhance teaching. Not only that, but he believes such tool can also help reduce dropout rates. Italy is among the first EU countries to have launched a pilot project to begin this year, introducing the use of AI in 15 schools across 4 regions.
L'intelligenza artificiale non si limita a dire ok, questo è un errore, ma come dire, indica al ragazzo quale tematiche deve approfondire, non solo, ma rispetto a quelle tematiche fornisce dei contenuti che possono aiutare appunto I ragazzi a individuare il punto debole nel loro processo d'apprendimento.
In this school, only fourth-year students will be involved in the trial. Using an online platform, they can improve their learning both in class and while doing homework. We asked one of the teachers involved in the project how it will work.
Una classe sarà di controllo di test e un'altra sperimenterà questo sistema. La classe di controllo è importante perché farà una didattica di tipo tradizionale e servirà proprio per confrontare i risultati.
Students welcome the initiative.
Credo che noi siamo tutti cresciuti con l'AI e con lo sviluppo molto forte dell'AI e ci troviamo in un momento in cui lo utilizziamo tutti, ma siamo anche ancora consapevoli del fatto che ci siano delle problematiche, delle incertezze sulle informazioni che dà certe volte l'AI. I professori ormai si sono anche loro resi conto che noi ne facciamo uso e quindi va regolato sicuramente.
Initially, the program will be tested for a limited time with the hope that it can be extended.
Parte quest'anno questa sperimentazione su 15 istituti nazionali, durerà 2 anni, sicuramente essendo un progetto sperimentale sarà soggetto poi a valutazioni successive. Visto il trend di attenzione verso l'intelligenza artificiale, immagino già facilmente che si estenderà a tutte le scuole.
Italy's education minister said one of the goals of using AI in schools is to bridge the gap between supply and demand in the labour market. Giorgia Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.